Hello and welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their personal and individual experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So, the pain, the stress, the struggle that the divorcing people, divorcing men and women go through. That's what I do. I help them find peace and sanity and assist their lawyer in the legal process. This saves them thousands of dollars because it shortens the time of their divorce. My name is Tina. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And thank you for joining me. And I'm graced today with Carol Murray. She is an awesome person. So I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about her. She's with leadership, personal and organizational change experience. Carol Metz Murray is a personal possibility alchemist, an intuitive leadership coach, advisor, facilitator, and professional speaker, and 5 times author. She is a mesmerizing communicator, and I can tell you she truly is. Listening and building breakthroughs with her clients. Her keen sense of life possibilities gained through life experiences of shifts and changes led her through trauma, anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout to heart-centered, grounded, and unshakable. Authenticity. She's aligned and sharing her message that God has given her to share with others. My notes got all kind of messed up there. So I want to welcome you, Carol. And so thank you very much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Tina, for having me on your podcast. I'm delighted to be here with you and spend time with you.
I can tell you, you are one of the rare people in my life that I get to talk to, that I get to sit on this wonderful pedestal and look up because what you've experienced in your life, I experienced after you. So it's like I've been following in your tracks all this time. So I find that a special place for me. I know the last time that we talked, I know it brought me to tears because we were just right there together. And you talked to me a little bit about the trauma that you experienced. So for our listeners, can we start with you telling the trauma that you experienced?
Yes, we can start. Trauma for me began at a very early age. I was sexually abused by a neighbor, and that went on for 6 years. And no one would believe me that this was happening. And as that little girl, what I did was I closed my heart because I just felt that my voice didn't matter. However, there was also a part of me that wasn't going to kind of be slowed down and stopped, and that's really what kept me moving forward. But those the trauma that I experienced and that feeling of not fitting in and not being heard did impact me as I built relationships and grew. And as a result, I stepped into a very violence-filled marriage. And I will share with everyone, because it's interesting, you would ask me this question, Tina, because I was thinking about this morning. And stepping into that violence-filled marriage, on my wedding day, I intuitively knew I was making the biggest mistake of my life. but I went ahead with it. Now, as a result, I have 4 beautiful children. But in essence, they've paid the price with me. Ooh, I couldn't get emotional. And the violence was well, the violence was violent. From certainly yelling and being punched, and then it escalated to being strangled. And that happened to me twice. And I thank God that I had enough strength in me when it was happening to do some body moves that got me out of the stranglehold. And I mean, the first time it happened, my husband at that point looked at me in horror and stormed off. But that didn't stop him. I don't know what was going on inside of him. Uh, and then it just really, really began to escalate after that. And one of the many things that transpired was that if I was outside working in, say, the strawberry farm that we had, or out in the yard, and he would drive into the yard with a half-ton with his truck, he would actually chase me. And so there were many a time that I had to outrun this half-ton and, outrun it from the perspective that if I didn't, I was going to get hit. So for many years after leaving and divorcing, yes, I had PTSD. Every time I saw a gray vehicle, I froze. But that, only escalated some more. And, I knew in my heart of hearts that I needed to leave. And I don't know what it is about someone, including me, that we stay in relationships that aren't healthy. It wasn't, as I said earlier, it wasn't healthy for me, and it wasn't healthy for my children. But it got to the point where I did ask for a divorce. It just said, I'm leaving and I'm divorcing. So I guess in essence, that wasn't an ask. It was, I'm telling you. What then transpired was me coming face to face with a gun. He was pointing a gun in my face. And I just went, oh my God, silently. And he looked at me and he said, there's only one way that I can deal with this, is to shoot you, and then I'll kill myself. And I looked at him. I said, what are you thinking? There are 4 children here. And how will they be impacted? And he just looked at me. And deep inside of me, I knew I needed to really, really be able to move through this and talk him out of it. Because the trauma that the children were going to be impacted by was, well, it's just, I can't imagine. So internally, I calmed down and I just quietly began to talk with him. Don't ask me what I said, because I don't recall. But I quietly kind of soothed him, and he eventually lowered the gun, and he looked at me, and he said, "What have I done?" And I said, "You will have to figure that out yourself." And he stormed off. Ah, I was beyond um, shock. But I knew then that I needed to get out, and I needed to get out with my children. Not now, but right now. And so we did. But that wasn't the last incident. I left, I filed for divorce, and on I think it was Thursday afternoon, I'm sitting at work, and my office was at the back of the building. It was 5 o'clock. Everyone else had left. And generally, when, the practice was when you leave, you lock the front door. And I thought everyone was gone. And I was busy working at my desk on a project. And I felt that there was something in the room, and I looked up, and there he was.
Mm.
And I just froze. I was like, oh my God, I'm the only one here. And knowing what he was capable of, I just went, oh my God, calm down, Carol, because my heart was racing. And he starts screaming at me and hollering, "This is all your fault. If you came back to me, none of this would be happening." And on and on and on. And I looked at him because he was standing and I was sitting. I said, "I'm not coming back. We are not coming back. Please leave." And he lunged at me, and he grabbed my throat again and started to squeeze. And he squeezed and squeezed. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Please help me. And he was obviously, very, very angry. And in this particular case, what saved me was my right elbow, because he was standing over me, but I was able to, even though the breath was being squeezed out of me, I was able to bring my elbow up and elbow him in the groin. And somebody actually must have been helping me, because I hit a very soft spot. And when I hit his groin, he released me, and the look of anger and rage on his face was something I've never forgotten. And he goes storming out, and he turns and he looks at me. "This is all your fault. You're all to blame." And I just sat there and just said, "Please, God, get him out of the building." And he did. He went tearing out, and I did hear the door close. And I just went, wow, wow, thank you. It took me quite some time to move through all of that trauma, a good number of years. But also, one of the things that I did with a lot of that trauma was I stuffed it down because Carol was strong and Carol could handle all of this, except Carol's body said no more. You have to deal with all of this. And that happened about a year and a half after I left and got my divorce. And that's a whole nother story of releasing trauma and getting into the heart of the matter. And that was where Naked Leadership was born.
So, for those of you viewers that just heard Carol's story, and by the way, it brought me to tears too, Carol. There are some of us that are in those abusive relationships right now. And so, a couple of things that happened here that maybe Carol's story, and we can prevent you with this information from going through what she did. So, when it's time for you to get out of that relationship, which you will need to, don't say a word to them. You need to put together an exit plan, a safe exit plan. And inside that exit plan is an emergency exit plan. Those are things that I help my clients with, but you need to never say a word to them. The most dangerous time in any relationship is the moment you go to leave it. And the abuse that happened in my marriage always happened when I was going to leave the fight. I ended up with a broken hand and separated ribs and finally a dislocated leg. And through all of the course of all of that, it all came about. Like I said, every time I would go to leave, just the fight, not the marriage. And what you heard Carol talk about was that she told him she was going to leave, and then the gun ended up. That's exactly the way those will happen. You don't ever speak about, don't write about it, don't talk about it to anybody but who's safe, because this situation can end up like this. And I really wish I didn't have to tell you. This is the only time I've ever heard of somebody getting a gun pulled on them. But this is something that happens on a semi-regular basis to those of us women, or men in some cases, that are in situations that we know we need out. So when it's time, you need to seek help to help put that emergency plan together, the exit plan together, and get help to get out of there and have a safe place to go. And at some point, we'll actually sit and talk about that. But where Carol was at and what she went through, so many of us go through to get where we're at. And Carol's time frame, we were taught, she's a little bit older than me, but we were taught as women that once we say I do, we stay and we stick it out. And so many people, I see comments on my posts where they say, well, all you have to do is pray about it, or it's just words when they yell at you. It's not. It's not just words. And eventually those words end up to be things thrown at you. Eventually those things become fists or belts around your neck or guns in your face. My own father was shot at on more than one occasion. So it's not just us women who go through this. Men also go through the same type of abuse. Men also go through the same type of abuse that Carol and myself did when we're young and we get molested. Boys, young children, doesn't matter what sex they are, they can go through this. And the one thing I can tell you, like with Carol's story is like she told people and people didn't want to believe her. And that's the case. That was my case too. And I didn't tell my story until I was way older. And my own mother didn't believe me. And I was an adult. I was in my 30s when I told her this story. And that's the point when we hear our children tell us that, we need to keep our words to ourselves, because we don't want to take their words for less than what they really are. Keep your words to yourself. get help for the child and get help for yourself to process this. Now, Carol, you went through all of this trauma, and it took you years. So kind of tell us how you went through all that and where you're at now, because you said it birthed your work now. So kind of explain how that happened.
Oh, yes, it was some 40 years of going through trauma. And may I just interject just before I tell that, when you talk about and thank you for sharing what you have shared with your listeners. My childhood abuse, the sexual abuse, it took nearly 50 years until I had it validated. When I met an old school friend many years later in Vancouver, BC, and we began to talk, and out of her mouth came, I was sexually abused. And I said, and who was the perpetrator? And it was the same person that was a perpetrator to me. So to everyone listening, you just never know when some of that information may very well come forward. So never, ever give up hope. But my journey of and through the trauma came to a head. And I was living in the far north at the time, in the Yukon, working my dream job. But I was also at the same time working on my master's degree, which meant that I had to drive 500 kilometers one way from Dawson to Whitehorse. So there was a 1,000-mile trip or return trip. And I did that for 2 years on top of being a workaholic and working long hours and just constantly giving and going. And on my last day of my last course, on my way to Whitehorse, I drove 300 of those 500 kilometers consciously unconscious.
Mm.
And when I came out of that in total panic, because I didn't know where I was. I couldn't even comprehend that I had a steering wheel in my hands. And here I was driving on this road, and it was scary beyond scary. Because I mean, I could have driven off of the road, and in the Yukon, the ditches aren't 2 or 3 feet deep. They're mountainsides. And I was, beyond scared, like just beyond scared. And I knew something huge was going on inside of me. When I got to my destination, I called my doctor. And my doctor said, Carol, either you deal with this or I'll make you deal with this. You've been living high stress all of your life. Your body is shutting down. That, Tina, was all I needed to hear, because in that split second, or those few seconds of thinking, what would my children do if I had driven off the road and killed myself, in a vehicle accident? What would they do? They may have been self-sufficient, but come on, Carol, that's not a way to live your life. And so it was in that moment, courage stepped forward and said, Carol, make a decision and make it now, like right now. And at that moment, in those seconds, I knew I needed to change my life and I needed to discover who I was, because the Carol that I was really wasn't me. I had put so many barriers up and so many glass walls and so many masks that I needed to discover who I was. And let me tell you, I mean, that was a very dark point in my life, because my mental health was in tatters, my physical health was in tatters, and as a result of my health being what it was, and I lost my dream job. And so there I was, unemployed. But the one gift that came through all of that, and I can smile because a little voice said to me, you will write your thesis and you will have your thesis in by the date that it needs to be in. I really don't know how I wrote my thesis, given the shape that I was in. I really don't. But I did get it done in the 3 months. And it was actually, when I got it on the fax machine to the University of, it was Southeast University in Juneau, Alaska. Off it went. And I mean, it was just like, wow. And that was then I walked across the hall at the college where I was and picked up the newspaper for all of the Yukon, and it fell open. And you know how synchronicities happen when messages are supposed to come? It fell open, and on the right-hand side, on that bottom half of the newspaper, that was where my job was advertised. Nobody had said anything to me. And yes, I was no longer the CAO for the city of Dawson. And I was like, oh my, like, it was just like, what do I do? What do I do now? So that was my gift. That was my gift for graduating my master's program and the burnout. However, the journey then began to discover who I was. And it wasn't a quick journey. It took many different twists and turns to release all of the trauma. And yes, when it started to release, some of the releases were like tornadoes and hurricanes. Other releases were quiet rains. And for me and my body was I needed to find ways to release that would work for my body. And what I mean by that, Tina, was I attempted psychotherapy. And in the second session, I could feel things were not silent in my body. And I looked at the psychotherapist and I said, I'm leaving. I need to leave now. And she looked at me and she said, well, what have I done wrong? And I said, this isn't about you. This isn't about you at all. This is about me. And my body is telling me, I need to get out of here, because if I don't, I will be just kind of erupting everywhere. And I said, my body needs to move. That's the message that I'm getting. And I left, and then I said to myself, okay, so now what? And so my journey of healing was a lot of energy work, a lot of movement, some through dance, just dance that helped me move my body in different ways to release the various traumas. And the more I released in my body, the more that my mind also cleared out. And I, I continue on my journey, and I refer to it now as self-image adjustments, because the more I released, the more I opened my heart. And the more I opened my heart, the more I was able to use my voice. And for me, that is what worked and continues to work.
So
yeah.
I kind of want to interject something for the viewers. What Carol is talking about here relates to mind-body medicine, and in natural health, this is a point of healing in the process where once our brain is done with experiencing the trauma or the incident, it will store it someplace in our body, and specific places get certain memories. But what Carol's saying here, that if you do not take care of this, your body will force you to take care of it. You'll get cancer, you'll get ulcers, you'll get migraines, you'll have hearing issues, you'll have eyesight problems. Just a one for instance, just recently I had a client where they said I woke up and my right eye was messed up. And so we talked briefly and I said, so let me tell you what mind-body medicine says about the right eye, that you don't like something that's going on with your family and it's work related. And after I told her that, she says, oh my God, that hits it right on. We hired my brother. He's not working out at, at our job, and now I have to release him. If you are dealing with trauma, like what Carol has spoke about, it's inside your body. If you don't, and movement is huge. Carol is so right about that. Talking is good, but that only gets half of it out. The other half is stored and needs some physical work to make that happen. So go ahead and finish, Carol.
So in my journey forward and that discovery of me and learning all about who I am, I mean, there's aspects of me that, for example, leadership. I have always been in leadership, but I started my leadership training at the age of 5 when my dad on the farm said to me, Carol, you need to learn how to lead the horses and the turkeys. And we could talk about that for another 2 or 3 hours. But that was, in essence, a foundation of who I was. All the traumas weren't. And for me, the more I healed, the more that came forward. The more I healed, the more that the gift of words came forward that I was able and am able to share with others as a professional speaker. And those words, just the messages come through me. And so those are the gifts that come as a result of my healing. But my healing also really demonstrated to me that you, Tina, and I, Carol, and all of your listeners, everyone is a leader in your own life, because you lead your own life. When you choose to or don't lead your life, things can happen and things will happen. So really, the whole aspect of naked leadership is really getting to the core of who you are. And with all of the healing that I've done, what I've also discovered is that it's never over. And I've realized that your healing and growing continues until you take your last breath.
Amen.
Really and truly. And it's just, yeah, it is just so amazing. But I will also share with everyone in this journey, no one, and I say this to both women and men, no one has the right to hurt you. No one. And as I was going through this journey, there came a point where someone said to me, "Well, Carol, why did you stay? Why did you put up with it?" And I remember that question was not near as scary and painful, but it was painful as having a gun pointing at me, because I had to stop and ask myself the question, Carol, what had you staying in that relationship? Knowing what you know, what your intuition told you at the very beginning, that you were making a mistake. What had you stay in this relationship? And for me, that was a deeper digging into the core of me, of what had me staying there. And, it was the belief of being not enough and of not being worthy. And, that I didn't deserve anything. It was like, where did that come from? Some things had happened in my childhood. But it's interesting, Tina, there's another trauma mixed in all of that sometimes we don't even realize. But in my journey of healing, I did talk therapy, which is really very different. It's where someone asks you a question and that's all they do, and you get to talk. Well, at that time, my body was ready to release, and I was blown away because up came these words of, why didn't my mother want another pregnancy?
Hmm.
And I was that pregnancy.
Yeah.
I'll never know why she didn't want another pregnancy. But it's not but. I picked that up in vitro as, as the fetus. I picked up energies and, was born with those energies of, feeling disconnected, feeling unaccepted. But those were, feelings that I stepped into this world with. Did my mother love me? Yes, she did. And yet there was always these questions that I had in me. So, I mean, traumas are so complex and so intricate. However, all of that has brought me to where I am, where I'm able to share that with others and be there for others and see the possibilities in others. And that's one of the gifts that I have, Tina, of when I work with clients. I get to see their possibilities before they get to see them. And it's then their choice whether they walk towards them. But throughout all of the traumas, I truly am blessed because I am still here and I'm talking with you and sharing this with you.
And we're starting to come to the end of this right now, Carol, but I I want our viewers to understand that the gifts that she's talking about were bestowed on her from spirit, from God, however you choose to see that. We are all born with gifts, and sometimes those gifts stay boxed up, bottled up until the trauma starts to open those gifts. And the gifts that each of us have, it's truly important for us to understand. Again, we're talking about the talk therapy and how it's bottled up into our body and being able to see. I was a martial arts instructor for many, many years, most of my adult life, in fact, and it people would say I have a couple of black belts. How I wouldn't have gotten here had you not forced me. How did you know that I was capable of doing this? Just like you said, Carol, you're able to see things before the person sees them. You're able to see into them. And that's the work that if somebody chooses to work with you, that's what you're able to help them heal with from their traumas, from their episodes in their life, their past, and to build, because this isn't about just digging. It's about getting to a solid ground and then building up. And so as we start to close, Carol, one of the things that I ask for is that I know that all of our viewers can find your information here, but how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me in two ways. One is they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can find me there at LinkedIn at Carol Metz Murray. Or they can also go to my website, and my website is www.carolmetzmurray.com. So either place, you can find me.
Great, great. And for those of you who don't know anything about me, I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in the complexities of divorce. I've also experienced that trauma. My father and my late husband experienced physical trauma from their relationship. So I not only know it from textbook, I know it from experience. This gives me the understanding of what you're going through. And you can reach me on my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me on social media, Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, LinkedIn Tina Huggins, on Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. And so, what would be a really good piece of advice that you can give somebody, to our viewers right now, Carol?
My advice to viewers is, and Tina mentioned it earlier, is when you make a plan. But before you make a plan, there is a step, whether it's to make the plan or in my case, where I needed to shift my life. It's make a decision and make it now. And that decision then is tied, there's courage there that surrounds you, but it's tied to action and focus to move you forward. And making that decision is really, truly a demonstration to you that you are strong and your inner strength will carry you through.
And the one piece of advice to fit in right there is seek help. Carol couldn't go through this alone. She sought help. I didn't go through my healing from my trauma. I sought help. My husband has been passed now for almost a year. And in order for me to get here and to be present for you, our viewers, and my clients, I've had to seek help. So seek help, no matter what that looks like. If you're trying to get out of a relationship, I am there to help those people. If I'm not, I can find somebody who else is. So for people that, and this is including those of us in divorce, suicide often comes to mind when we're in so much stress, so much pain. If you are contemplating suicide, please know that you can call the suicide hotline at 988. Real simple, 988. That gets you right to the suicide hotline. If you're in the Netherlands, then you can call that hotline 113. So when you're dealing with a situation where you need to have the police present, here in the United States, you can call 911. In the UK, it's 999. And in the Netherlands, it's 112. Once you get the cops there, press charges. Do not drop those charges. My late husband was a very big advocate for this. Once you drop those charges, what you've experienced to this date will more than likely get worse. That's where the gun ends up in most of my clients' face. It's when they go to leave and then they try to mend things up and drop those charges. That's when they end up with the gun in their face. And so make sure that you press those charges, keep those charges. That's your key out. And if you or somebody you know is dealing with domestic violence, please call the domestic violence hotline here in the U.S. That's 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. Get the help you need. And I need to ask you viewers to please like, comment, and share this so that it can help others. Thank you again so much, Carol, for joining me. And I will definitely have you back. We'll have a second half of this and we'll talk about how people can go through and heal from their traumas.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, Tina. I so appreciate being here with you and sharing my story. If it helps just one person, that to me is a gift that I can give to others. So thank you. And I look forward to being back with you again.
Thank you, Carol.